Donald Trump, former president of the United States, being charged like he would if he was running the mafia. That's today on a special edition of Equal Matters. That's Cal, the guitar hero, with the Equal Matters intro. How you doing? My name is Rob Hunter. Appreciate you being here with us on Equal Matters. This is going to be an unbiased look at the charges against the former president of the United States, Donald Trump, in his fourth set of indictments. This one from Fulton County, Georgia. It has everything to do with the election, and that's the crux of this. But it's what and how it's being done that are interesting, because we enter further into the unprecedented waters that has become American political history that is unfolding right before our eyes. A former president of the United States is alleged by Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis to have conspired to overturn a legal election, conspired to do it in an illegal way, and set up a racket. Donald Trump is being charged under the RICO statutes, Racketeering, Influenced, and Corrupt Organizations Act. It's a very broad set of laws that allows the government to do quite a bit, of which they did. But in order to meet these RICO criteria, there has to be two or more people that agree to commit a crime. And what they're saying in Georgia is that Donald Trump conspired with 18 others, including Rudy Giuliani, the former mayor of New York City, who himself rose to fame using RICO to take on the mafia. He's named in this case. It's absolutely irony wild. It's just, wow, how things happen, right? And then number two, you have your people who are conspiring, have to have a specific intent. The intent here, according to Georgia, is that Donald Trump wanted to overturn an election. And then the final part is that at least one in the conspiracy committed acts in furtherance of the conspiracy. Overt acts are what they're called. That is a massive part of this 98-page indictment against Donald Trump in Fulton County, Georgia. 161 acts in the conspiracy is the allegation. Now, what I want to do is break up the charges into different categories, because there are quite a few people involved in this. And it essentially, this indictment put down by Fulton County, it documents everything that Trump and the co-conspirators did. Who Trump talked to, what Trump talked to them about, what the violation of the law was, according to the Fulton County District Attorney. Same thing with Rudy Giuliani. John Eastman's another one. He was a lawyer. Sidney Powell's another name that you may have heard, affiliated with Trump, especially during the election. Jenna Ellis is another one. Jeffrey Clark, his name is mentioned in here. A couple of others as well. But the overarching theory, the legal theory, is that this group acted together to overturn the election. And this doesn't even make the case anywhere that Trump didn't know. It almost says that it doesn't matter whether Trump knew, because the courts upheld the election. There's nothing wrong with the election. Trump knew that. He was losing court cases, but continued to talk about it and continued to have things happen behind the scenes. So in breaking up the charges, I'll do it this way. One of the big deals here was the fake elector story. I don't know if you heard about this, but this was a plan, a theory put forth by Team Trump somewhere along the way, that just in case we have any electoral college victories in court, we have our own set of electors. And there's different theories as to what was said and different, facts that have been found as to what's been said as far as that goes. But the fake electors play a big part in Georgia, because Georgia's district attorney is taking the approach that Donald Trump had no right to do that and was, in fact, illegally doing that, because there was no indication that the election was going to be overturned. So that's a huge portion of where this indictment goes, because that's part of the conspiracy that Fani Willis is alleging. But here's something else of note that I'm not sure how many other people have picked up on. But one of the things they mention in here is that Donald Trump had a draft of a speech written a couple of days before the November 3rd, 2020 election. And in that, what was essentially a concession speech, because, as your president, you prepare for both. You win, you have your preparation speech for that. You lose, you prepare for that as well. So I understand that, but what's interesting about what's noted in the Fulton County District Attorney indictment against Donald Trump, his fourth, is that the conspiracy almost began with that draft speech because Trump was going to include fraud in there. So he was already lining up what the narrative was going to be, according to this DA, ahead of the election. So then on November 4th, when Donald Trump declared victory and said that the election was fraudulent, that is where Fani Wells alleges this conspiracy began. And it started as phone calls, and it progressed from there. That's what this document alleges. Is that at first it was phone calls, and then it was suggesting that there be a special session of the Georgia House or the Pennsylvania House. It's also worth noting the broadness of this case because it doesn't just include things about Georgia, including the fake electors, because there were several states where these alternate series of electors went and voted that Donald John Trump should get the electoral votes. It wasn't just that. They did it in Arizona. They did it in Wisconsin. They did it here. And all of that is part of this charge. And the RICO law, first enacted in 1970, was designed to do that. It was designed to take on the mafia because these were really complex organizations. That's what this allegation is that it was a complex organization that engaged in everything from making false statements and false writings to intimidating a witness and an election worker, solicitation to have politicians violate the oath of their office. That's how deep this goes. But there is one interesting allegation that's newer, we haven't heard yet, is that Sidney Powell, one of the lawyers on Team Trump after the election, hired this firm, and this firm accessed data from Coffee County, Georgia, from the Dominion voting machines. Now, what Fani Wells, the district attorney, says is that that is illegal. And it's conspiracy to commit voter fraud, which, again, is littered with irony, isn't it? So you have the Rudy Giuliani factor, which is just ironic that he used this law, the RICO law, to help bring attention to himself to become the mayor of New York. Took on the mafia. Now, that this same law that launched him to fame is now being used against him. And then there's the irony that what they're alleging Trump did, Team Trump did, and again, this is the conspiracy of it, that it's all linked. So you get one in the conspiracy, you get them all. That's why they're trying them this way, because it's like bowling. You're trying to knock out all the pins, or at least as many as you can. But it's ironic that Fulton County District Attorney is alleging that it was Team Trump that hacked into the voting system. And it wasn't really so much of a hack, but this also part of the conspiracy is that there was, I don't know, someone that worked at the Coffee County, wherever they do the elections, account the elections, and she let people in on Team Trump. So say these allegations. So that's really where you have this conspiracy, and that's really what it's all wrapped around. In the detailed count of the acts of up to 161 is nuts. The level of detail that went into it, because they include several tweets from Donald Trump, of which the government, Fulton County District Attorney, is saying that Donald Trump used his tweets to further the conspiracy. Again, I don't know how much legal standing that has. I don't know if you can challenge some of these acts, but obviously what the Fulton County District Attorney is trying to do is say that there's plenty of evidence that this is a RICO case based on the theory that Team Trump all conspired to overturn a legal election. Because that's what the basis of all of this is just that. That the election was sound, everything was fine. And I'm not making any allegations of that because there have not been any court cases that would suggest otherwise. There have not been any appointments. There have not been anything that has changed, legally speaking. So there was no ever reason to think that the election was fraudulent. That is what this case is about. And using a very interesting statute, the RICO statute, to do it. Because this is ultimately, either side you look at this, it's how power is used. And the decisions that are made when people have power. And you can look at Donald Trump and you can read this indictment and you can go through all of these statements and all of these acts, which I have done, and you look at the theme of what they're trying to sell a jury, and it makes sense to you. Now, if you're Team Trump, you hire the best lawyer, and he's hired a lawyer for this case, the Fulton County case, a rapper lawyer. But they love him. They say he's really good. He's like the best there is. He's worked for a bunch of rappers, cases like this. So Trump's hiring the right guy because you look at the decisions that Trump has made in regards to all of this, and you look at the decisions that the government has made, in this case, Fulton County, the district attorney there, taking her shot. I mean, this is a massive case. This is a massive allegation against a former president of the United States. That from the 4th day of November 2020 to the 15th day of September 2022, this criminal enterprise, quote, unlawfully conspired and endeavored to conduct and participate in, directly and indirectly, such enterprise through a pattern of racketeering activity in violation of the Georgia RICO Act. Pretty wild, because they're saying that this was all done on purpose, all done to commit an unlawful act. That's the conspiracy part. All done together, 19 people in all. And what they say here in this indictment is that this criminal enterprise engaged in various related criminal activities, including to but not limited to false statements and writings, impersonating a public officer, forgery, filing false documents, influencing witnesses, computer theft, computer trespass, computer invasion of privacy, conspiracy to defraud the state, conspiracy to defraud the state, acts involving theft, and perjury. And they've got it all lined up. I mean, this case has the hallmarks of being a long one because there is tons of detail. And there's tons of legal maneuvering that the Trump team can do, too, because of the unprecedented nature of this. There's already, movements by one of the co-conspirators alleged in this, Mark Meadows, who was at one point Trump's chief of staff during all of this. He's trying to move this from Fulton County to federal court because of the nature of the case. And it is massive because of the allegations in it, because of the crimes alleged in it, and because of the picture that it paints against a former president, which is the intent behind it. Here's what I think stands out to me. The intimidation of an election worker. And how this is spelled out in the indictment is that there was a worker named Ruby, and they said that, she's committing fraud. She's committing fraud. The government document here in front of me, this indictment, says that she did not commit fraud. But it went beyond that. It went that people called Ruby. People showed up at her house. People affiliated with either Team Trump or some of Trump's lawyers or some of Trump's people. Some of them are named as part of this conspiracy. That's interesting because intimidation of a witness and trying to, what they allege is that they tried to get this election worker to sign a false confession. And on top of that, that the people that went to look for her knocked on her door, talked to their neighbor, Ruby's neighbor, and said, we're here to help. She's facing a threat, and I can help her. So that's what they're saying in this is against the law. So it's all these little things, right? There's a movie that Denzel Washington is in with the guy that was in Mr. Robot, Rami. It's called It's the Little Things or something like that. And they're detectives, and it's this, realistic kind of approach to trying to solve murders. And what Denzel's character says is the little things that always give you away. Here in this, it's meticulously put together because it stacks a list of little things that you might not think were connected, but it connects them all together, and that's where the basis of the conspiracy is. So you have access to voter data that they shouldn't have, which is illegal. Intimidating a witness, trying to get that witness to falsify statements, to sign a falsified statement, that also illegal. So you have this illegal activity surrounding this big plot because these are keys, getting the voter data, intimidating that election worker. This is according to the government. that led to the conspiracy to overturn the election, because those were two keys that you could do it. A couple of other things: the false statements, perjury, forgery, filing false documents. That's related to a lot of the fake electors. What Georgia is saying, well, more specifically, Fulton County is saying, is that Donald Trump and his team, with their fake elector theory, that was illegal, plain and simple. And those documents are false documents, and that too is illegal. So it's the commission of all of these illegal acts the government suggests are what created the conspiracy. Here's another big one that's a big portion of this indictment against Donald Trump: solicitation of violation of oath. This is your calls. This is your emails. This is your pulling Mike Pence aside, the Vice President of the United States, which is interesting, a part of the Georgia RICO case, in trying to get them to violate their oath of office. I live in the state of Arizona. We had a House Speaker here named Rusty Bowers, who's mentioned in this indictment. And Rusty Bowers in this indictment is quoted as saying, he said that to Rudy and Trump, look, I support you guys. He did. Rusty Bowers, a Republican. But I can't violate my oath of office for you. Something along those lines. That's the case. The case is, in part, the pressure that Trump, Giuliani, and his team and his lawyers, the pressure that they put on public officials, state lawmakers, Speaker of the House of Arizona, the Speaker of the House of Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, a couple of other states, was a solicitation to violate their oath of office. So that solicitation, right? Think of it like a prostitute. You're asking for something. That, according to this document, is against the law. So you see how they start to stack this together to create all these things. You mentioned words like forgery and perjury. And all of this is going to play out in court. It's the only way it can. But this is a massive, major allegation that a former president of the United States, after losing an election, essentially turned himself into a mafia boss. Got his lieutenants, like Rudy Giuliani, John Eastman, to do his dirty work to try to overturn an election. And this is just the very beginning. President Trump is promising to respond on Monday with a 100-page document, allegations of voter fraud in Georgia. So there's going to be a lot of legal maneuvering. And this could be a court case because it's in Georgia. If it stays in Georgia, it could be seen on televisions around the world. So stay tuned. Just thought I'd give you that breakdown. It's a very interesting read, but it's all about performance in the courtroom from here on out. The judge, the jury, that's what's going to matter. But we'll keep you up to date here on Equal Matters. Just wanted to get you a nice, unopinionated rundown of what these allegations are, damning as they are. But that shouldn't surprise anybody, I don't think, at this point. Well, where do we go from here? We certainly live in interesting times. There's still plenty to be grateful for, especially if you don't have to be involved in the trial of Donald Trump. You just get to go about living your life, because that right there is something to be grateful for. But we'll keep an eye on this because it is history unfolding before our very eyes. This is what our kids and grandkids and great-grandkids will be talking about for years, and even then from generations after that. What happened to America in that era of Donald Trump and Joe Biden? Once again, my name is Rob Hunter. Thanks for being here. We'll see what happens next in the cases against Donald Trump. Have a great night.